So welcome back to the channel, guys. This is going to be a continuation of the Gold 2021 backtesting series, where we backtest from the beginning of 2021 all the way up until the end of 2021. This video is going to provide a ton of value. I'm also going to be walking through the full trading plan and strategy for anybody new to the channel. I'm going to be giving away the full rule set, from entries to exits to risk management, everything you need to know to use and apply this in the live market and start making money with it. So without further ado, let's jump right over to the charts and let's get straight into it. Okay, so jumping right into things with the trading plan itself, the first step I'm always looking at, right, is higher time frame market structure and direction. Fairly simple stuff, but simply looking to identify the daily and 4-hour direction, and we're only then looking to trade in line with this direction. So for example, if we've identified that the daily and H4 are in a bullish trend, I'm only looking to buy and I'm not looking to the left to try and sell from an area to the left, for example. And I'm then going down to the 4-hour and 1-hour time frames just to identify some more refined structure, draw on any previous mitigations in structure, and just so we can get an overall idea of where price is currently trading. For example, is it in a premium at the current bullish leg? Has it pulled back into a discount? And all of this sorts of things, just so we can get a reference of where price actually is. Now, just to explain this idea of drawing on previous mitigations, what I exactly mean by that is, for example, if we have a bearish trend such as this one, I'm drawing on where price has previously reacted from a supply, or where it has previously swept liquidity from. This is just so we can more easily identify the trend and also where price is reacting from, so that when we come over to step 2 and 3, we can more easily identify the trading range, which is the range of prices where we're looking to sell or buy from. Now, step 2, very simple once again, we're looking to identify any areas where we could actually look to buy or sell from. So after having identified that the overall trend is bearish, for example, we need to clearly identify some areas where price could pull back into for us to actually look for the sells from. Now for me, I've got a few different criteria that we use for this point of interest, or POI, as I'll refer to it in this video. Starting off, it needs to be a clear level of supply or demand within the current trend leg. So imagine we take between the high and the low of the current trend leg. I'm looking for any areas of higher time frame imbalanced supply or demand, supply in this case because we're in a bearish trend, and then I'm looking for price to pull back into it, and then we're looking to short from that level. Now before we move on to step 3, there are a few other criteria that we need to see satisfied. For example, the area of supply or demand needs to create imbalance. This basically just helps us to find higher probability areas where price is more likely to react from, because if these areas created imbalance, there's a high likelihood that, because price created volume from this area in the past, is highly likely going to react from it once again if price pulls back into it. And we also need to see some liquidity built below the area if it's a supply, or above the area if it's a demand. Now in this case, you can see right here, for example, that price took out some liquidity into that area of supply, which is what validated it for me, and it also created imbalance. So this was a valid area of supply that happened just here, and then this is the new one that we're looking at once that mitigation happens and once price pushes away from it. Now, obviously, when price comes into these areas, we don't want to just blindly buy or sell from them. We want to wait for some sort of confirmation that price wants to hold the area. And this is not only going to allow us to increase our win rate, but it's also going to make our trades a lot more accurate and allow us to really optimize and capitalize on a higher risk to reward opportunity, as opposed to, for example, if we were to, let's say, set a limit on this whole area, the risk to reward would kind of be ruined, right? Because we'd have to have a huge stop or target all the way down here somewhere. Whereas if we wait for a lower time frame confirmation inside this area, we can get away with having a smaller stop loss, but targeting some of the more intraday levels that price is likely to gravitate towards. So this is where step 3 comes into play, which is when we're going down to the M5 time frame. Always the M5 time frame, by the way. This just helps to give you a lot more clarity in your trading. If you're always using the same time frame, same approach, it's just a lot more methodical and mechanical, right? So once we see price come into this area of supply, all we're simply waiting for is for the lower time frame structure to flip back bearish. Now, let me just show you a quick example of what I mean on the charts. So for example, with the bearish scenario, let's imagine this is our higher time frame, right? And we identify a point of interest just here. If we draw that on, this is our point of interest that price has pulled back into. So this would be your imbalanced area of supply with liquidity below it. One thing I always try to emphasize to the guys inside VIP, the mentorship and community, which is that if you are looking for price to pull back into an area, is higher probability that this level holds if you see some liquidity start to form below it, because once that liquidity is taken out into the point of interest, there's a high likelihood you see some sort of reaction from it. I digress slightly there, but what I'm essentially looking for in terms of the lower time frame entry is, for example, let's imagine that price is pulling back into the point of interest. On the M5 time frame, this is going to look like a bullish trend, right? Because price is fractal and is pulling back on a higher time frame. Therefore, this is going to be a bullish trend on the M5 and lower time frames. Once we get price tap into the supply, I'm then very simply waiting for price to create a lower low, which signifies to us that this uptrend has come to an end or has likely come to an end. And then we're looking to basically trade in line with this newly formed downtrend and take price lower. So all I'm waiting for essentially is for price to break the current higher low in this downtrend. I'm then waiting for a pullback into an area of imbalance, and then I'm looking to short down with my stops just above the high, or in a logical place that makes sense. And I'll show you exactly what I mean when we get over to the charts for that. And then as for the targets, what I'm doing, and by the way, this is a massive game changer if you haven't already tried it, I'm going to mechanically target a 1 to 3 risk to reward. What this essentially means is that no matter what the price action to the left looks like, no matter what the liquidity levels are, no matter where the support resistance is, I'm always targeting a 1 to 3 risk to reward. This makes your trading a lot more mechanical, and it also takes any of the discretion out of your TP rule, which often I find leads to errors that people make, such as exiting the trade early because they don't know exactly where to take profit. It can lead to greed because people feel like because the trade has gone 3% in their favor, they may hold it for another 3% only for it to come back and stop them out. It also leads to stupid mistakes, for example, like making break even when you haven't actually tested a break even rule, and just all of these different complexities, right? So I find using that mechanical 1 to 3 approach just a lot more easy to follow and beneficial. It also just makes it more consistent as well. So that is what we're going to be testing in this session. Now, the only other thing that I wanted to mention here, we briefly went over step 4, which was the stop loss on TP placement, which again will become a lot more concrete and obvious once we go over to the charts themselves. The only other thing I wanted to mention was in this video, we're going to be doing 1% risk. Obviously, because it's backtesting, this doesn't matter as much. When we go over to when you take this over to the live market, there are a few more nuanced details to this depending on whether you're trading prop firm accounts, live prop firm accounts, challenge accounts, or your own live personal funds. And I've detailed all of the rules for this system in this trading plan document as well, which you can find in the description below. It's completely free. You can download it for free. And I also mentioned at the end as well the key processes that I use, such as trade journaling, how I do this, and also something called ASR, which is like a period-based, so weekly, monthly, or quarterly based performance review, where you go back through and you reflect on your performance and your overall results. And I've also outlined how exactly I do this as well. So you can find that in the description completely for free, along with the actual Notion journal that I use to do these processes, right? It's the exact template that I use. So you can find that for free in the description below. But as for the actual trading strategy and plan itself, I think that's everything that is necessary to mention here. So let's jump over to the charts now and let's get into the actual back testing itself. Right guys, so thanks for joining me back here over on the charts. So as I said, we're gonna just continue from where we left off last time. So if we jump right into things, what we can see here on gold, if we're just focusing on this sort of price action that we've had right here, obviously you can see very clear bullish price action. So still looking for more buys as we were last time. If you also look on the weekly time frame, you can see that price has So I've done this retracement, very corrective looking price action, and then it reacted from this sort of demand held, and now price is pushing back up towards some of these previous highs. So in terms of like a higher time frame view, I am still bullish on this and still looking to continue buying back up to some previous levels. One thing I am going to mark on though is we have this sort of area of supply to the left that price is approaching. Could maybe see some sort of counter trend move from that area, but at the moment the main focus is definitely the buy. So if we jump down to the 4 hour, I'm just going to mark on some of the current structure that we've had previously. So obviously we've had this breaker structure right here. Price has then pulled back, reacted from this sort of demand, which is where we caught some buys from at the end of the last session. Now jumping down to the 1 hour, once again we can see price broke structure here, pulls back, sweeps this last bit of liquidity right here, and then we've got this sort of internal trend forming. Hasn't yet broken the high, so going into the session, the first idea that I'm going to look for is to just buy up into this high. You can see where price is kind of just forming this resistance, lots of liquidity built here above, so I'm essentially just looking to buy up into that. And at the moment you can also see price pulling back, reacting from demand. This is the first point of interest I would look at, basically just looking at this internal hourly bullish trend where we've had this sort of bullish price action forming. Heading over to the lower time frames, obviously this is where we're going to actually get the entry. So in terms of actual entries here, what I'm thinking is either price respects this demand, this is the first sort of area I would consider buying from, or alternatively if price could come slightly lower, maybe grab Asia low, I would be happy to go from there as well. But it's going to really depend on how price develops from here. As I always kind of emphasize to the guys inside VIP, it's much better to react to price rather than predicting where it's going to go, because if you predict where it's going to go, you're going to end up missing a lot of trades or keeping a bias, which is going to prevent you from seeing price objectively and in sort of this neutral state of mind, right? So what we can see here, prices come down quite impulsive, but this is one of the sort of characteristics of gold. It does these impulsive moves, looks like a reversal, but then just continues to the upside, so that's completely fine. Hasn't yet presented an entry, so let's keep playing price. Okay, so price is continuing a little bit lower. Let's see it now if that second idea plays out, which was that Asia low has been grabbed. Obviously a clear level of liquidity in this range that we're looking at. So this is the sort of next area I would look at. And yeah, so it was just taken out. So if we can start to see price breaking bullish here, we can look to enter. At the moment, I'd want to see it break this high. Okay, there we go. So that's what I was looking for. So re-grab of the low, we've now had that clear change of character, and price has created an area of imbalanced demand. So this is a perfectly valid entry. I'm going to set my limit on this area. Just here. I'm going to have the stops just below this lower demand, just in case price wants to, you know, retest into this one maybe. Actually, at the moment, I'm going to set my limit here instead with stops below the low, just because I'm seeing this one as like an inducement. Unless price creates some more liquidity above it, then I will change my entry. But as of right now, this is the trade I'm going for. Okay, it doesn't look like it's pulling back for us though. Yeah, okay, so obviously I'm going to cancel that limit now. One thing that is key, and one thing I want to mention here, is when you see price push all the way up like this, right? You don't ideally want to see it pull all the way back down here, because then that is a good indication that it's probably just going to break the low and not respect your analysis. If it did come back down to this sort of region, I would want to see another confirmation rather than just having a limit set. So yeah, let's see if it does start to pull back or not. Actually, this is still valid for me. I'm going to set the limit here. The reason I'm liking this one is because this demand did sweep that low to the left, making it a higher probability area. And then as before, we're just going to do that mechanical 1 to 3 target like we were testing last time. So if this lets us set the limit, there we go. Slightly missed us. Right, there we go. Very nice reaction. And there we go. So first TP of the session. The other thing that I liked about this trade, right, is if you look where price starts to pull back from, again, it's just kind of formed this very clear and obvious resistance that people are trying to sell from. And you can just kind of tell, right, it's built all of these highs above, not reacting from anything significant to the left, and very corrective pullback into this area of demand. And as it came down, it also created an inducement just above it. Obviously, you could have probably got another confirmation entry if you wanted to wait for one. Let's just have a look. So yeah, in terms of like an M5 confirmation, or you could have even looked on the M15, it did cause a change of character and then retest into the demand. So if you missed this initial trade or you cancelled the limit, you could have still capitalized on that. But yeah, first idea of the session played out. That high to the left has now been taken out, which was this one. Obviously still very bullish though. I'm not looking to sell from there. Like I said, I would consider sells if it comes up into this supply zone up here, but unless it does that, I'm not really interested in selling. You can see to the left it's just kind of in this imbalance where you wouldn't expect it to reverse from. Okay, so it has come into that supply zone, but one thing I'm going to do here, right, is because it is overall bullish still, I'm going to kind of just react to price. If it holds the demand, we can look to buy. If it starts to flip bearish, we can obviously keep that in mind as well and look for the sells instead. But as of right now, I would be more inclined towards buys, just going with that overall higher time frame trend. So here we've had a sweep of 1 and 2 lows into the demand, which was the hourly demand zone, right? So this sort of region. So let's see how price reacts to this level. You can see it push in at the moment. Currently, we would need to see it break at this high for a confirmation, unless it regrabs the low or does something like that. Okay, so this is where we can maybe start to consider that price has flipped bearish, right, from that supply. Okay, so if we just zoom back out, yeah, so you can kind of see prices come up into that supply zone, and then in terms of like the hourly structure and also on the lower time frames, started to flip bearish just here, right, and then also broke structure again. So maybe we could consider some sells here if price forms a new point of interest. I'm not seeing anything at the moment, to be honest. Maybe this supply that's pulled back into, you can see it starting to react from there. Yeah, so I'm not seeing anything there in terms of entries. Yeah, so analysis played out, but there wasn't an entry there for me. And you can still see prices in this newly formed sort of bearish structure. So what we can look for now is basically just some shorts down into some previous levels. Maybe like to take out all of these lows that price created before. That would be quite nice. Cool, so what I'm thinking here is where could we see the sells? Maybe from this level, price has just taken out this previous high. And again, going back to the trading plan, I'm basically looking within the current leg, so between the high and the low, for the sells. It hasn't actually taken that out yet, so I'm going to wait for that. Right, there we go. So now it's taken it out. One thing I like about this as well is you can kind of see lots of people are probably viewing this as a break of structure and jumping in the buys. We've had a 5-minute change of character. You can see price re-grabbed the high, then created a lower low. I'm not seeing any imbalance to enter offer yet, so I'm just going to play this on a little bit more. Okay, no, so price wants to come a little bit higher, it looks like. Okay, so let's zoom back out. It looks bullish now. Okay, so yeah, here it looks now like our bias was wrong. So prices come down, held the demand, and now we've seen this very clear wick out of these lows. Prices pushing up towards this high. So I think even if you are going to see sells, we could look for some buys up into this high. Keeping in mind that it's still within that daily supply zone as well. Yeah, that's annoying. We could have got the buys there. I wasn't paying attention. Cool, so let's have a look. Where could we look to buy from? So first idea would be prices come down, taking out this Asia low. I think we just missed the entry there. M5 entry should have been on this demand that I just missed. Yeah, so nothing here just yet. I'm just going to play price on. And yeah, there we go. So high was taken out. Obviously still very bullish as well. This is quite like a little bit more ambiguous now, because price, you could also take the view here that this was just like a re-grab of the high for the sells because it is in that daily supply zone. But based on the sort of lower time frame structure we have, I would more so be interested in buying. Maybe from this area of demand that is just wicked out. Obviously this is the current bullish leg on the hourly time frame, so this would still be valid for the buys if we do get a confirmation here, which we have just had. So this is looking like a good trade. We've had change of character right there. Price created a demand. If we can get a pullback into here, this is a valid trade. Just gonna set my limit right there, 1 to 3 TP, and let's see if this pulls back for us. Quite a corrective pullback, which I like to see. There's not a lot of intent so far. Yeah, it's looking like a loss. Yeah, there we go. So little loss on that one. That's fine. Let's move back on to the next trade. Damn, I think we were just slightly early on that. Yeah, so we could have probably entered on, if we have a look, could have probably entered on like this more extreme, like this whole area right here instead, and you could have capitalized on a nice move. But yeah, just slightly too early on that move, which is fine. And yeah, this is what I was talking about, right? You could have also taken the perspective that this was just a sweep for lower prices. Now that prices kind of flip bearish, very clear momentum coming in as well, which obviously is what you want to see if you're looking for sells. So I think at least now temporarily you could see some shorts. Obviously we've had this 4-hour trend obviously flip bearish. So if we zoom back out to daily time frame, so one thing I like to do when you see price reverse like this, or whenever you see it pulling back in an overall bullish trend or even a bearish trend, is just kind of zoom out, look at the levels where price could potentially come into. So in this case we have this area of previous liquidity, right? And then you also have maybe this daily demand just below. So what I'm thinking here is I'm kind of just keeping an open mind, right? So I'm thinking this could either be a complete reversal for the sells, or it could just be a pullback for more buys. But where could price come into before the buys? We have this level and we have this level, but at the very least you would expect price to continue selling into that liquidity. So we can look also to capitalize on some sells down into it. If we go back on the 1 hour, we could maybe look at, well, I think price needs to develop a bit more first. There's not really a clear point of interest yet. Maybe we could look at this area, which is a clear supply zone. One thing I've also just noticed as well is, like I said previously, all of these lows have been taken out and price has started to react from this demand, which we can see, and then it's starting to push up and it looks like it's about to flip bullish. So yeah, if we can get, did it close above it on the M5? If it closes above this structure to the left, I'll consider buys. As of right now, we've just had a wick above, so it's not quite valid for me. Yeah, there we go. So did close above. This would be the demand I would look to enter from. But price is also now approaching our supply zone as well. Yeah, so I'm going to look for some sells here based on 4 hour. If you look on the 4 hour, this would probably just be like a small move based on the fact that it hasn't grabbed the lows down here. So again, I'll be reactive to price. I'm not going to stay married to one bias, but yeah, I'm comfortable taking sells here, but I'm also comfortable looking for buys if it comes back into that demand based on the fact that it did cause a change of character, right? So if we look here for an entry, nothing just yet. Right, there we go. So that's what I was looking for. This was the pullback that put in a new high. Price now created a lower low just here. And it has also created an area of imbalanced supply with some liquidity below it. So if we set our limit here, stops, I want to have it a little bit above the high just in case price grabs it. One thing gold likes to do is sometimes it will do something like this where it takes out that first sell-off and then makes the real move. And then as always, we'll go for a 1 to 3. There we go. And we'll set this limit. See if it can pull back. It's quite a lot of intent, which I like to see. Right, we're tagged in. Let's play this on higher time frame. Nice reaction so far. There we go, we're getting the sell-off. Damn, so price just took us out there. Obviously we could have maybe had like a smaller stop and then got a 1 to 3 based off that, but that was fine. One other thing I would consider is kind of now that we've had a sweep of this supply, so if price starts to sell off from here, this would be the kind of last point I would consider selling from if we do get something obvious on lower time frame. Yeah, this is Asia session, so I'm going to fast forward it, but this is exactly what I was looking for. We have this, which looks like a breaker structure, but then price ultimately comes lower, creates a new low, and yeah, so what I'm thinking here, I would be happy to enter anywhere within like this sort of imbalance, right? So I'm going to set my limit here, just above that last bit of liquidity in the range, and then have stops just above Asia high. And I think there's a high likelihood at least this low gets taken out. If you just look at it, for example, on the 1 hour, it just looks a bit, this just looks like an obvious breaker structure that people are going to try and buy above. So I'm going to set my limit here and we're going to target that. All right, so we just got wicked out there. Slightly annoying, we were a little bit early. Is there a re-entry opportunity here? Yeah, so we could also look for a re-entry maybe, now that this high was re-grabbed. price broke structure to the downside again. And it created an area of supply. This one is a high probability area because it also wicked out some liquidity to the left. So I'm happy to enter back on this one if we can get a 1 to 3, which we can. Once again, like I said, targeting these lows at least. And let's have a look. Can it pull back for us? Looks like it wants to. Right, there we go. So we're wicked in. Nice reaction so far. Nice, so perfect second entry. Obviously re-entering from that first trade. I would still consider the buys here though. You can just see it's like a clear area of demand that caused that change of character. So even if this is the thing about this strategy, right? Even if you're wrong about the direction and price does something like this, you can still look to capitalize on that initial push because we're using lower time frames and we're using only that 1 to 3 risk to reward, which basically just allows us to capitalize on the moves, whichever direction that price wants to head in. There we go. So we did get a nice reaction from it. This is going to be quite difficult to enter from just because we've had that big move up. Actually, maybe we could look to enter from here. This is a good entry. So what I'm thinking is that we've had this change of character, right? But because of the momentum that came in here, price is unlikely to come, you know, like all the way back down here, for example. So I'm going to actually enter from here instead. Also kind of just want to see what is there to the left that price could react from. I don't like how we've kind of had here. So obviously this was the initial change of character after price swept that high. We then had another break of structure. Price has come back up, respected this supply, and now we've started to have that sell-off. I'm going to do a bit of a riskier entry here. If we can get something like this with a smaller stop, but I don't ideally want to go for a big move here. Right, so we're tagged into this. Cool, there we go. So, like I said, taking advantage of those smaller moves. I said this was slightly riskier just because the stop was not ideal. I would have ideally wanted to have it down here a bit more, but yeah, cool. So TP hit on that one. And price looks to be continuing up. The only thing I would watch here is how it reacts to this wick. Because you could, like I said, I'm kind of just keeping an open mind here and reacting to price because you could still view this as price being bearish after that 4-hour change of character back towards these lows. So yeah, let's see how it reacts here. Obviously it also has just come back into this supply that it reacted from before. So this could just be a sweep of the first tap. Gold does this a lot. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward Asian session. Okay, Asia high taken out. Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted to see. So sweep of the highs, change of character, area of supply created. This is a valid entry. We set the limit here. Stops just above that high. And then once again, 1 to 3 TP. We don't want to do that. We want to do a limit order. You can also see here as well, right? There's a lot of intent. There's a lot of momentum coming in, which I found just makes the trade higher probability. If it does start to pull back, here it doesn't look like it wants to. Yeah, okay, so obviously I'm going to cancel this now. You wouldn't expect price to come all the way back up there. Yeah, there we go. So there wasn't really an entry there. Price just continued to sell off, but our overall idea was quite good. As you can see, price swept that high and then we got the sell-off. So what I'm thinking now, obviously price has sold off quite heavily and is clearly gravitating towards this low. So I would look for pullbacks to enter on sells down into these lows, right? You also have this one to the left. This looks like a bit of a mess, so let me just get rid of some of this. So yeah, I'm looking to target these lows, right? Let's see if we can get the sells down. Okay, yeah, it doesn't look like price wants to pull back for us. It just continued selling off. That's fine. We can still look for the sells though. Obviously, price is still bearish at the moment. And like I said before, where could we see it sell into next? The price looks to be targeting at least this daily demand. There's not really anything else for it to react from apart from that. So yeah, looking for price to sell into that area. Obviously, once it comes into that area, we can look for buys, but until then, simply looking for some sells down. Maybe from here, you can see it's pulled back, swept this last high before the imbalance. If we look on the 4 hour, yeah, so let's just see how it reacts here, lower time frame. See if it can close below this low. Yeah, there we go. So that's what I was looking for. 5-minute change of character. This was an imbalanced supply. So yeah, this would be a perfect entry actually. You can also see it created this liquidity below it. I'm going to set my limit here. Stops just above and we'll go for a 1 to 3. Cool, so let's set this limit, see how this goes. There we go, we're tagged in. Cool, so stop loss on that one. Damn, so look, oh, we just got wicked out by like a pip again. That was slightly annoying. Overall idea was good though. As you guys can see, price did end up breaking lower from there. Let's see, price is kind of just consolidating. There we go. It's breaking lower. You can also see where it reacted from there, right? It took out the last high before you had that imbalance. Very sort of like corrective here as well, right? That's kind of what you want to see if you're expecting price to go lower. It's broken structure again, so we can still look for some more sells. Cool, so obviously that daily demand zone was not respected. We can look for more sells now. The only thing actually I would consider here, it has just grabbed this higher time frame low. So maybe we could see some shorter term buys from here, or even a reversal maybe. But like I said before, right, this could have just been, if you look on the daily, in terms of the structure, this was the current lower low the price created. So this could even just be the formation of a lower high for price to come back down towards the lows, which actually I would think is more likely now, to be honest. Let's just see how price develops from here. Obviously it's very bearish at the moment. Yeah, okay, so obviously I'm not looking for sells anymore. Sorry, I'm not looking for buys anymore. Price is clearly broken to the downside again. So just very simply looking for more shorts here now. Obviously, like I said, very bearish trend. We can look at a new point of interest. Okay, so nothing there. Next area for me would be this high, which is the last sort of internal liquidity in this whole range. Right, so that got taken out. Could also look at this high if price takes that out. But yeah, at the very least here, you would expect price to go for these lows. You can see where it stopped. It's just stopped at this sort of random support. So before looking at any buys, you would at least expect this liquidity to be taken out. Or if you're going to see a complete reversal, right, you would expect that liquidity to be taken out. Yeah, let's have a look if it starts to flip bearish from here. There we go. So we did get that shift to the downside. Price created an area of supply. Let's see if we can get an entry here. I would say this is a bit lower probability because it did close quite a lot above that high. Yeah, I'm not liking how this is coming up either. Yeah, there we go. So little loss on that one. That's fine. Actually, maybe we could also look at the supply zone itself rather than looking for a sweep of that high, because there was some liquidity below it. Hasn't quite reached it, so I wouldn't want to sell this just yet. Right, there we go. So price has come into that supply, swept Asia high into it. Did that high sweep? Yeah, so I would consider this a change of character. So price put in a new high here. It then broke lower, just here. We've got this area of supply to enter off. So let's have a look how this goes. It doesn't seem like it's pulling back for us. Yeah, so I wouldn't enter on this area anymore. Cool, so only thing I am thinking here is that it's kind of come down now and swept. Actually, it didn't sweep that high. Maybe we could look at this area, but I'd want to see another confirmation on it now rather than just entering. Right, there we go. So price has tapped into it. Let's have a look how it reacts. Cool, so we're getting that sell off, but there wasn't an entry there for me. Cool. Next area I would look at, this one. I played it slightly too quickly there, but we should have entered on that region. Let's just enter here. Market execution instead. So let me explain why I'm entering here, by the way. So it came into that point of interest, gave an M5 change of character, and then created this imbalanced supply, but I missed the initial entry, so I'm just going to enter here instead with a more sort of safe stop. Nice, there we go. So TP hit on that one. Obviously, if you weren't using the mechanical TP, you could have just gone for the lows, but in this case, we were using that mechanical TP. Cool. So price is obviously now broken structure again as well. But look at where it's come into. This is that liquidity level that we had marked, which was this daily low to the left. That's now been taken out. When you often see this on gold, you see the higher time frame liquidity taken out. Price then goes for the opposing liquidity, which in this case is like up here at these highs. So I'm going to monitor here for some potential buying opportunities if price starts to give us a confirmation. Obviously we need to see it break bullish first, otherwise I'm not going to look for the buys. Yeah, there you go. So you can see price starting to push. It broke this structure to the left. Where could we look to get in? Maybe if it can retrace into this area. Let's have a look. We also have this one. I want to see another confirmation on these though. I wouldn't want to just enter. Okay, there you go. So price respected that first one and is now continuing to the upside. As you can see, we've now kind of got this shift from bearish to bullish, very clear bullish structure forming. And what we basically look for here is if we get rid of some of these markings, based on where the opposing liquidity is after it swept that daily low, you would at least expect it to gravitate towards this high. Maybe we can look to sell if price sweeps that, because price is overall still bearish, higher time frame, but we can also look to buy up into it, right? If we look for some more areas. I was going to say this one, but price just tapped it and went. Maybe if we can get a re-grab of this low, this one right here. But yeah, apart from that, there's nothing here I would look for. It's quite range bound. Yeah, there we go. So price has grabbed that high, did so with quite a lot of momentum, which is the only thing, but let's have a look. It could still start to present some sells. Again, though, I'm still going to keep an open mind here because this could just easily be change of character like this for higher prices now that it has grabbed that daily low down there. So that's another possibility, right? Apart from that, the next liquidity level I would look for is this one. If price starts to react from there. In terms of if we're looking for buys though, I would look for maybe this area. But yeah, I wouldn't sell from here anymore just based on how much price is closed above it. Maybe we can look for the longs here though. Nothing just yet. Right, so you can see, did we get that change of character? Yeah, so we got that M5 change of character I was looking for, just there. Where could we see price pull back into for an entry? Maybe this area. Down here. I like how you've got some liquidity resting above it as well. So I'm just going to set a limit on this area. Stops just below. And then 1 to 3 TP. Slightly missed us. Right, there we go, tagged in. Nice, TP hit. So very nice trade. I also like the fact here that we had that inducement just above the zone, which was sort of like an extra confluence. And as before as well, you could have targeted the high if you weren't doing the mechanical TP rule, but I'm just going to stick to that rule for this backtesting session. Okay, Okay, so next buying area I would look at, you can see now price has grabbed these lows, right? And it has come into an hourly demand to the left. Still hasn't grabbed this high up here, so that's fine in terms of the buys. Can we get an entry here? Let's have a look. Only thing here is that there's not really any structure to the left until it breaks this high, just because price has come down with this one impulsive move. Actually, I would consider, if it breaks the supply, I would consider the buys from there. Yeah, like that. So this would be a riskier entry because it's not like a clean change of character, but if it does start to pull back into the demand, because we have that clear momentum coming in, and because it's grabbed these lows into an hourly demand, all of the confluences are there. So I'm just going to enter this and go for a 1 to 3. Just going to make the stop slightly bigger. My thought process behind this stop loss is that I could maybe retest this demand as well. So I ideally want to have it positioned like this. Yeah, there we go. So we just got stopped out on that one. It looks like it's probably going to head over to TP as well. So the mistake I made there, you can see this was like an inducement. Price wanted to hold this demand. We could have also probably got another confirmation here. You can see broke that internal structure and then retested the demand after it. Slightly annoying. It does look like it's probably going to play out as well. Maybe we can look for another entry from here. Slightly riskier, but yeah, if it can start to react from here, obviously fast forward the Asian session. Okay, no, so price is coming lower. Next potential area for re-entry, this demand. Yeah, there we go. So you can see price respecting it. Asia there was also taken out. If we can see a pullback into this demand, this would be a valid re-entry. Stops slightly below. Let's see, can it pull back for us? Right, cool, we're tagged in. Right, no, so price wants to come lower. Why is it reacting from now? Let's have a look. So quite range bound, to be honest. It did sweep the hourly demand, as you guys can see just here. So that's the only thing I'm thinking, and it has kind of shown quite a lot of intent away from that level. So yeah, maybe if it can start to break bullish from here, which it has just done. There's not a clear demand to enter from here yet though. Actually, yeah, maybe this whole area. I like this one because it swept that liquidity to the left. But yeah, this is kind of like the last point I would really want to buy from before we look at some more discounted areas. So let's have a look. Can it pull back into this area? You've got some nice liquidity above it as well. Can it pull back? Let's have a look. Still valid at the moment. Okay, no, so now it's invalid. This became invalid, by the way, because it broke the main high. Actually, yeah, we should have been entering on like this whole region. You can see price tested into it on the 30-minute. Like I said before, the only thing I want to watch out for here is that this could just be a sweep for those lower prices that we were seeing. Because if you look back on the daily, you could still say this is bearish. So I'm going to watch price here and see if it can flip bearish. Hasn't just yet. Yeah, there we go. So it has started to flip bearish, you can see. Broke this low, which was the current higher low. Yeah, there we go. So you can see price starting to flip bearish. This would be the area I would look to sell from, but with another confirmation. We've got some liquidity below it now as well. Right, there we go. So price has come back into that supply. You can see it building all of these lows down here as well. So let's have a look. Can it start to roll over in this area? Yeah, there we go. So that's what I was looking for. Sweep of the high, price broke the low, and then we can look to enter on the imbalance that it created. Going for a 1 to 3. Nope, slightly missed us. Next sell zone. So price is taking out this liquidity. Either we see it go from here, or we have this area of supply. I'd want to see another confirmation on that now though. Yeah, it looks like it's going from here. Cool, so we've had a sweep of that high, change of character, imbalanced area of supply. This is a valid entry. Let's just go for this. Stops above the high. If price breaks that high, I don't want to be in this trade. And we'll go for a 1 to 3 again. There we go. Okay, cool. No pullback. This becomes invalid, by the way, once it breaks that low, because then you need another confirmation on it. I would consider this supply that it just came into, now that it's broken the low again, just here, or this area, that's still valid. Looks like it wants to come higher at the moment. It's just consolidating below that level. Right, this is Asian session, so I'm going to fast forward it. Yeah, there we go. So it did sell off from there, but we didn't get an entry. Next area I'm looking at is this high. Price is whipped back into it. And it is still overall bearish as well, if we have a look. Actually, maybe like here, we've seen price come all the way back down. We've got that 4 hour, if we just get rid of some of this, we've got price wicking out all of these lows. It's then pushed up towards that high. So I'm actually going to look for some buys here, because you could say this is a change of character, right? And then you've got price creates an area of imbalanced demand. So I'm going to enter on this. This is fine. It's a valid trade. And you've got some liquidity above it for an extra confluence. And we'll go for a 1 to 3. Okay, nope. So a little loss on that one. That's fine. Looks like, yeah, we were just slightly too early on that one. Slightly annoying. But yeah, guys, I think I'm going to end this session here, and we will get into the next part in the next video. If you haven't seen any of the previous parts, then I would recommend watching this video next. If you also want to learn how I trade in complete detail, or join the community, our daily live calls as well, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.